All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the January 28th first meeting of the Center State CEO Government Relations Committee for 2022. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Alberto Bianchetti, and I am the Director of Customer and Community Engagement for National Grid. And we welcome all of you here and welcome a special speaker this afternoon. We'd like to express our gratitude to our advocacy sponsors for 2022 for the Center State CEO Government Relations Committee and our general advocacy efforts. Exelis, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, JMA Wireless, and Quadrant Biosciences. So thank you to Exelis. Excuse me, I know how to say it. Exelis. I apologize. I don't know why I was saying Exelis. Exelis, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, JMA Wireless, and Quadrant Biosciences. So thank you all for your sponsorship for 2022. I have the great privilege of welcoming and introducing Matt Driscoll as our speaker today, who will give us a presentation of the FY 2023 New York State Executive Budget. Of course, Matt Driscoll is familiar to many of us, and we're pleased to welcome him as a native son of Syracuse. Matt Driscoll is the former mayor and the current executive director of the New York State Thruway Authority. Matt will share details on Governor Hochul's executive budget proposal, and we'll have some time for discussion with us about the budget. As background, and many of you know Mayor Driscoll and Executive Director Driscoll's background, but let me take a minute to share that with you. From 2001 through 2009, Matthew J. Driscoll was the 52nd mayor of the city of Syracuse. His 2 terms in office were noted for national leadership in energy conservation and a focus on our unique strengths in clean technology, earning us a recognition as one of the greenest cities in America. Mayor Driscoll also introduced data-driven tools across city government that improved service and resulted in significant savings for city taxpayers. And perhaps his longest lasting legacy as mayor, he ushered in the era of Say Yes to Education, making Syracuse the first city in the nation to offer free college tuition to every graduate of a city high school. In 2017, Mr. Driscoll was named Executive Director of the Thruway Authority. He oversees one of the longest toll systems in the United States, spanning 570 miles across the state, serving as a vital artery for commerce and a magnet for economic development in areas throughout New York. Prior to joining the Thruway Authority, Mr. Driscoll served as Commissioner of the New York State Department of Transportation, leading a department of 8,300 employees with an annual capital program of $3.7 billion. Mr. Driscoll has also served as President and CEO of the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, which provides low-cost financing to local governments for wastewater and drinking water infrastructure, a resource so critical and a competitive advantage for us here in upstate New York. It's the largest and most successful state revolving loan fund in the nation. So please, on behalf of Center State and the members of our Government Relations Committee, please help me welcome Mayor Driscoll, Executive Director Driscoll, Commissioner Driscoll. However we want to refer to him, he's our old friend, Matt Driscoll from Syracuse.
Thanks, Alberto, and Matt Driscoll is just fine. Thank you, everybody, for joining in today. It's good to be here. Good to have an opportunity to go through a presentation as Alberto outlined for you today. As you're probably all aware, on January 5th, Governor Hochul released her vision with her first State of the State. And then on the 18th of January, she followed up by releasing the budget to support that vision. So I will run through the State of the State for you today. When I do, there's 9 sections here that I'll move through. And at the end, I will then, give you a snapshot of some local investments as well, pertinent to Syracuse and Central New York. So starting with section 1, rebuilding healthcare, the economy for more New Yorkers. So this goal really is to provide wider access around those health services. And the focus is to not only grow the workforce, but focus on retaining our current workforce as well, addressing health equity issues across the state, all of which, of course, has been exacerbated by the pandemic. You can see here on this slide the need for health care workers. Even pre-pandemic was projected to grow by 32% by 2028. Pre-pandemic projections indicate a shortage of over 39,000 registered nurses by 2030. So there's been a definite impact that we're all aware of that, of the impacts of, that's gone on. And certainly for the first 11 months of the pandemic, calls to domestic and sexual violence hotline, alcoholism, mental health care issues all increased. It's been a real strain on everybody. The opioid epidemic, of course, continues to plague our communities across, not only here and across the state and nation. This slide here shows you the goal, which is to grow the workforce by 20% over the next 5 years. So if you see here in 2022 through 2026, that is the goal, to grow healthcare workers by 20%. So the governor is proposing to make a $10 billion investment in healthcare and support wages for workers. You can see here a litany of the actions that she is proposing. And again, I talked about retaining the existing healthcare workforce as well by supporting those trainers, those folks rather, with additional training, coordination, and really working with them to keep them involved in the healthcare system. Advancing health equity, of course, is always important, and that's something that the governor is strongly focused on as well. Under the health equity, again, making sure that the coverage gaps, which is experienced by far too many families, is closed, improving access to Child Health Plus insurance, and of course, mental and behavioral health services for children in low-income households as well. Also for mothers, expand Medicaid coverage for postpartum care, focusing on mental health issues there, as well as with our aged population. So the second one would be taking actions against gun violence, which all of us have read about here locally. 800 New Yorkers die each year, 2,500 are shot and wounded. So it's a problem that plagues every community across the United States. And certainly we've seen a rise in that with the pandemic as well. You can see here the increase in firearm homicides from 2019 to 2020 was 79%. Pretty shocking statistic, frankly. You look on the right here, you'll see the non-fatal shootings and the fatal shootings. The New York City is the lighter blue. They've had 105% increase, and it's been an 82% change everywhere else. And the fatal shot victims the same. You'll see 89% increase in New York City and an 81% increase in other cities across the state. So what is she proposing to do? She's proposing to really double down and really focus on supporting state police crime, gun tracing efforts, crime analysis center network, and forming a gun tracing consortium, which she just announced this week. She's done that with 5 other states, and offering things like doubling state police partnerships with local law enforcement. And I can tell you from a personal experience, it's very helpful to have state troopers who can be available on patrol throughout any municipality. The visibility really has a positive impact. The third section is investing in people. And that means accelerating tax relief for small businesses and middle income folks, strengthening reentry programs for formerly incarcerated individuals, and enhanced protection from consumer and financial abuses. We've all read about that, what takes place in that space. Our population, no surprise to many of you, has been shrinking. Our unemployment rate is quite high still. We're more than 1.5 times the national rate. We have a large unbanked community across New York State. About 25% of households are unbanked. And again, I mentioned the incarcerated New Yorkers. 42% of individuals who are released return to custody within 3 years. When we look at our agribusinesses and the markets, you'll see here 11,000 farms employed nearly 56,000 workers in 2017. That's down from 2012. Workers are down, payroll is up, and of course, the cost of those goods has increased about 4.5% as well. So the governor proposes on a meaningful tax relief and small business program, $100 million of relief for about 195,000 small businesses. accelerate $1.2 billion in middle-class tax cuts. That's going to impact about 6 million New Yorkers. Deliver a $1 billion property tax rebate. That'll impact about 2 million New York families. Also, a common theme throughout, and many of you know better than anybody, ensuring workforce development is a strong focus. In this case, she's focusing on region-specific employment needs, really helping recruit additional public servants. It's something that we've seen in the state side, people aging out, and expand the state's technology pipeline. The Jails to Jobs, you can see what she is proposing here to really help people get the training, the requisite training, and opportunities that they'll need to be successful and not return to an incarcerated state. Supporting the agriculture work chain is improve the food supply is very important. One of the things that that's being proposed here is to improve the school lunch program by transferring it into the Department of Ag and Markets. And that makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons, because you're going to support the agribusinesses while we're feeding our children. It makes a lot of sense to do that, expand SNAP access to the New York State farms. And again, then protect New York consumers from a lot of the fraud that we see taking place. And that also seems to have accelerated here in the last couple of years during the pandemic as well. So the fourth section is investing in communities. And that means really infrastructure projects and economic development projects, which help increase mobility and safety and ignite prosperity that will benefit regions across the state. You'll see here, we've had the fourth largest decrease in real estate GDP of all the states in 2020. Our infrastructure is heavily used, 130 billion vehicle miles per year. We have, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, 3,500 miles of passenger and freight rail network, highway miles, 17,000 bridges, airports, and municipally sponsored public transportation systems, which are all stressed and they are all old. Why? Because New York is a very old state. So clearly it's always a tug of war here to make sure that we're investing into our infrastructure. With the Federal Transportation and Jobs Act, it's really going to help us go a long way. And then, of course, focusing on broadband. If we want to ignite new economies, then we really have to win the war and ensure that we have equal access for everybody across New York State. So under a 5-year capital plan, and this capital plan on transportation side will be administered by the New York State Department of Transportation. You can see here some of the projects. These are a snapshot of what's going to happen across the state. And then, of course, when we talk about reconnecting neighborhoods and communities of color, you all know about Syracuse and the I-81 project and the Kensington project, very similar in many ways from what happened years ago. So real strong focus there, and then a strong focus on investing in commercial corridors and waterfronts, where there's a lot of opportunity in waterfronts as well. Investing in health and clean tech research. All of you understand the importance of that, have a real opportunity at the University of Binghamton. They have a world-class manufacturing center there. I myself and others have visited that. It's pretty unique and quite exciting. And then again, some of this is New York City centric, but really focusing on how the state is going to actually help assist small businesses. So the governor is launching $1 billion plan to do that. You can see some of the ideas here that go along with that plan. And then, of course, I mentioned broadband, bringing broadband to New Yorkers. It's very, very important as we move forward. Under the Section 5 of affordable housing, quite candidly, there's a bit of a structural imbalance to housing, especially since the pandemic. There's going to be broad conversations on this and the other things that I've mentioned with legislative leaders on equity, stability, affordability, and homelessness. And supporting housing, not only in suburban and urban areas, but in rural areas where there's also some real challenges. And homelessness, of course, is something that plagues every community across the state. So as you see here, this is somewhat of a snapshot of the city, but it illustrates the need for affordable housing across the state of over 600,000 units, which are necessary. We have more than 91,000 people who experience homelessness across the state. It's a challenge, and it's one that needs to be met. So under that 5-year housing plan, the governor is going to work to create and preserve about 100,000 low-income rental and cooperative housing units preserve and create about 10,000 supportive housing units across the state. And again, expanding housing supply, it's very important, not just in urban areas or suburban areas, but also in rural areas where there are equal challenges. As we talk about access and equity to keep New Yorkers in homes, she's proposing here some access for renters with justice involvement, creating and preserving, as I mentioned, 10,000 supportive housing units, and establishing safe options support teams to help facilitate those. We talk about number 6, which is climate action and green jobs. The 2019 Climate Protection Act is really the nation's most ambitious state climate law here in New York. And to reach that, New York must have 70% renewable electricity and 40% greenhouse gas reductions by 2030. That's only 8 years away, but it's doable, and the governor is moving in that direction. So the plan really circles around renewable, green buildings, clean transportation, and environmental conversation, to help meet that. Here you can see on this snapshot the challenge that lies ahead, from non-renewable, where we are now, about 73% on a statewide grid, to about a 95% by 2030 to hit that target. So we have to really flip that. We have to double the renewable generation through major investments of wind, solar, storage, and other technologies. You may have seen the governor did make an announcement about a week ago in the Port of Authority to help support that with a $500 million announcement. Creating jobs in the space of building, transportation, electric, waste, and industry, and agriculture. There's huge opportunities to hit that 40% emissions reduction in that space as well. To strengthen New York's offshore wind, as I mentioned, the governor announced $500 million investment to do that. And again, to achieve 2 million electrified or electrification-ready homes by 2030, and committing to zero on-site greenhouse gas emissions for new construction, buildings, and homes through 2027. EV adoption of electric zero emission vehicles, another $1 billion to support that infrastructure and adoption, and education, which will go along with that, electrifying the state fleet by 2035. And then, of course, the environmental space here, this fall, we will all have a chance to participate in the election when the Environmental Bond Act for $4 billion is before us all. And I encourage everybody to consider supporting that. So we talk about our schools. Certainly, we always talk about our schools during budget time. It's a very important piece of what we do. But the governor's looking at how we can reimagine higher education. And part of that means really utilizing some of the assets we have here with SUNY and CUNY and other institutions, and really focusing on what is becoming a problem is the teacher shortage that we're experiencing. You'll see here over the last 10 years, the reduction in individuals has decreased by more than 53% over the past decade. So we're getting less people, and you see on the right, we're getting older. So we need to focus on teacher recruitment. Can do that through SUNY and CUNY, as I mentioned. SUNY system really is a huge opportunity for research and development. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened over the past 10 years or so. The governor is focused on doing that. Enrollment is down across the board, and continuing, of course, at community colleges as well. And again, 2.5 million New Yorkers between 25 and 44 lack post-secondary degree or credentials. Here, support for educations in children accelerates the teacher certification, incentives to attract more teachers and school workers, and again, providing learning and mental health grants to high-need districts. This is a critically important issue, particularly in urban areas across the state of New York. Expand access to college-level courses, expand part-time tuition assistance. So if you go to school part-time, you can actually get, TAP program and assistance to do that. A lot of people, need to work and still want to complete their education. So I think that's a great initiative here as well. And then, of course, focusing on the higher education system, utilizing the institutions that we have. I mentioned SUNY, Stony Brook, UB. These are flagship institutions, and really utilize those to help springboard New York State into the future. Advancing New York's place as a national equity model is really going to be quite important for us. The events of the past 2 years, I think you would all agree, have marked a critical, if a long overdue turning point in kind of national awareness of social justice and inequity. The governor wants to build on the human rights law, which was first passed in 1945. It's been upgraded, several times since, but there is certainly a lot of room for improvement here. You'll see here at the bottom of the screen, since the beginning of the pandemic has clearly had an impact on all of our lives, and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. The labor force participation rate for women has decreased by a little over 1%. The unemployment rate for women has increased by about 3.5%. And the number of women not in the labor force is about 43,000 individuals. We have a backlog on the state side of certification processes for MWBE. So I think that's going to be very, very important to help let people get approved through that process and be a part of building New York. Ensure gender equity and equal rights. You can see here, I don't need to go through all of them. Gender equity, access for all, pass an equal rights amendment this session. Again, New York's looking at minority and women-owned businesses. This is a very important matter. And I think by investing into that from the state side, we'll see a lot of these things move along much more quickly. Protect and enhance New York's LGBTQ community, immigrant services, and of course, boosting local veterans programs. And then something that we're all painfully aware of is really, and her pledge to really restore New Yorkers' faith in the government. I don't need to go through all the things that we've witnessed over the past couple decades, but suffice to say, people want change. The governor is being bold in enacting a 2-term limit and banned outside income for statewide elected officials. That means the governor. Replace JCOPE with an effective watchdog and strengthen ethics requirements for local officials. So all of these things that I have moved through here on, now begins the hard work because the governor has proposed, and now she will negotiate with the legislature on what you've seen here today. Let me just run through, if I may, a few site-specific investments that are going to take place here in central New York. On the capital side, again, we talked about I-81. The governor has budgeted the $1.1 billion necessary to meet that $1.9 billion threshold. DOT has had $800 million in its budget for the no build option, which would have meant that would have been used, just to maintain the system. But now that will go towards the rebuild of I-81. The state fair, $23 million worth of upgrades there, and a $5 million green fair initiative, replacing stormwater lines and improving access to the fair on the backside from CSX. Redeveloped the former Syracuse Developmental Center. You may have seen that in this morning's news. She's pledging $29 million to help do that. Very bold, and of course, to support the city's efforts in Blueprint 15, another $15 million in that effort as well. The state fair improvements will continue on that campus. That campus is old, of course, so there'll be about $33 million in capital improvements on the fairgrounds to, again, support that facility for years to come. On the capital side, parks, which is a big part of what we have here and what we experience in upstate New York. There'll be a $200 million statewide investment there, but some of those funds are earmarked for, as an example, in this region, Battle Island, Green Lakes, and Clark Reservation, to name a few. The EPF funding is a $400 million environmental protection fund. That's also very important, really, when we talk about soil and water conservation districts, which are heavily used here in this region as well. And then we talked a little bit, or I did, on transportation and the need, for investment there. And so there's really good news here in terms of investment into transportation. CHIPS, which is local funding, it's provided to the local municipalities. It's local highway aid. There's going to be a $40 million increase for local roads and bridges in central New York. I know that's long overdue and much welcomed by local municipalities. Pave New York is another program that is getting an additional $11.1 million. Again, funding for local roads through that Pave New York program is going to be well received. Extreme winter recovery. This is going to provide nearly $8 million in additional aid for local roads and bridges throughout our region. Again, welcome money for local budgets that frees up if they decide to make monies fungible in their own budgets. It allows them to do the necessary work and improve those facilities. Road and bridge projects, again, here in this region as an example, a couple examples, about $6 million for Route 92 and 173, about $4 million for Route 5 bridge in the town of Camillus, and almost $10 million for Route 298 and Route to Carrier Circle, rather. Those are just a couple of them. On the thruway side, we're spending $84 million near between 37 and 38. We're replacing 3 bridges in that section, along with the main span over the CSX bridge. Also replacing the Canton Street Bridge out in Warners. It's a major thoroughfare for Van Buren and Baldwinsville and Camillus. Local roads, that's a $9 million investment. Transit will see an uptick in support as well. There'll be $42 million to the Transportation Authority. That represents about a 13% increase for them, critical support as well. And we did mention school aid. To give you a few numbers, in Central New York, that aid's going to go up by about $108 million. So that's about a 7.5% increase, including $70 million, which is an increase in foundation aid. And I'm sure many of you recall the arguments over foundation aid for many years, but this will be the second year in a 3-year full phase funding for that, foundation aid. So that'll be well received by school districts. On the regional economic side, the regional economic development councils will continue. It's been a fantastic program. I know some of you have participated in that over the years. The budget includes another $150 million for capital funding. That'll be administered by ESD as part of round 7 of that ESD fund. It's also going to provide a focus, again, supporting workforce development. I mentioned earlier that that's going to be regionalized. So I encourage CEO Center States and others. I know you'll be part of that conversation because you know how important that is. That will continue. Downtown Revitalization Initiative Round 6. This has been a fantastic program, over the past 5 years. It'll be $100 million for the 6th round of that. And really what that does is it allows the state's 10 regional economic development councils to work with local communities for potential transformations. The community is awarded $10 million. It's been very successful in these small downtown areas across the state. New York Forward, this really focuses on smaller villages and hamlets. It's going to help support that in this budget, includes another $100 million in that effort. Again, another 10 communities who have shovel-ready sites to demonstrate their ability to accelerate that revitalization that they're taking in their small communities. And again, we talked about a little bit about rural broadband. The governor is really, stepping up to the plate. $1.4 billion for Connect All. It's going to, again, towards connecting through broadband statewide. It includes $300 million from the state and about $1.1 million from the Federal Infrastructure Act as well. The New York State Regional Economic and Community Assistance Program, $800 million for investments in local and regional infrastructure. Again, really focusing on the things that, quite honestly, have been somewhat ignored over the many years. So that just gives you a very brief snapshot. As you might expect, that the budget is very voluminous. So I'm only touching some of the high points here, but in the interest of time, I'd like to open it up if I can and give you an opportunity to ask any questions or make any comments. If I can't answer your questions, we do have some individuals here who are taking notes and we will get you an answer. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Driscoll. So we can open the floor to questions. We do have quite a few people. So Kevin, do we want to just ask people to speak up, or do we want to monitor the chat? How do we want to?
Yeah, I was going to say, so if they don't want to ask the question, they can ask a question through chat. We'll take that and we'll make sure we get an answer.
Okay. So why don't we, if anyone would like to ask the first question, you can raise your hand. If not, let's see what we've got going on in the chat right now. So just glad to, so Matt, why don't we, I'll tee up the first question for you and put it right in your wheelhouse. Take a deeper dive on what the needs are for transportation, the throughway, and what you think is going to be relevant for you both this budget year and coming up. I know that some of us who haven't been doing a lot of traveling, the cut over to the no toll booths happened during COVID, and I think it kind of freaked a few people out as they were approaching what was expected to be a toll booth. They didn't see anything. So how's that going? And what's the budget mean for the throughway and for transportation in general?
Yeah, so well, let me just a little background. So the New York State Thruway Authority, we receive no state or local taxpayer funding. So we live and die by the toll. So I operate and maintain and essentially administer the entire operation through those tolls. Our budget this year be about $1.1 billion. But you referenced the pandemic, and of course, some of the things that I touched on was, the impact that the pandemic has had across the board on our daily lives and on the economy. And the same held true for the Thruway Authority. From March 17th of 2020, right through mid-April of 2021, we lost $146 million. So that had a significant impact on my program. And so we, of course, had to make a lot of adjustments to do that. The one thing that it did do was, to your point, traffic was reduced. So we were able to accelerate our all electronic tolling or cashless tolling project. And that was completed in November of 2019. So that was a real positive step for us to do that. People have raved about it. They love it. It makes things easier from an accounting standard on our part. We've now moved into a public-private partnership. I think we're one of the first agencies to do that in the state with the rebirth of our service plazas. We have 27 service plazas across the state of New York. 23 of those are going to be completely rebuilt. This is a $450 million private sector investment in a lease agreement with the Thruway Authority. So people are going to see a lot of changes there, a lot of upgraded amenities. We're going to focus on truckers, providing some kind of unique amenities that they haven't had a chance: showers, laundry facilities, exercise room. But there'll be new food choices, healthier food choices. And by the way, to support the EV build out across the state, we'll be adding 120 EV charging stations across the thruway. So you can go from the New York City line to Pennsylvania, and you'll have an opportunity to be able to charge your electric vehicle each step of the way. So that's what's happening at the Thruway Authority. We've got a lot going on. And of course, today I'm dealing with that big storm that's coming in. I'm shipping people and equipment down here from Syracuse as we speak, down into the lower Hudson Valley to support that effort down there.
Thank you. Kevin, I do see we have a few questions coming in on the chat. Do you want to run through those and then encourage anyone else, if they have a question, either put in the chat or raise their hand?
Sure. We have a question relative, and this one's from Dave, relative to the big infrastructure package that did pass with bipartisan support in DC. How do you see New York taking advantage of that? And is there an opportunity to build on that through matches?
Yeah, I mean, so New York is, and the governor, as outlined in our budget, is clearly taking advantage of that. I mean, look, she has put forward a very responsible budget, in my opinion, here. But, we have the benefit, of course, the federal funds that are coming in. Receipts are up across the board, so it puts us in a good position. And so she is leveraging those opportunities across the board. I mentioned workforce development as an example, certainly in infrastructure. Which I outlined as well. There are match opportunities. She's providing local funds to local communities who, I can tell you, for years have been asking for increases in local CHIPS aid funding, some of the extreme weather and others. So clearly, it's about on the transportation side, it's about a $13 billion investment from the state. That'll be the share of those funds. Those are going to be used wisely. That's how she's supporting, obviously, I-81, the Kensington and Buffalo, and some of the other developments that can help spur additional economies like waterfront development and elsewhere.
Matt, thanks. We have another question in the chat. This one's from Jai Subedi, who runs True Care, which is just a phenomenal business that has grown so much and is providing such great service, not only across the region, but really across upstate. Jai's asking if you can break down the budget a bit on the healthcare sector, sort of what we're seeing there. True Care is a home care management and home care services operation, and they're having a really hard time retaining folks right now,
Right.
Because of the reimbursements issues and what that really does to their ability to provide good wages, right? So
Yeah.
is there more that's being allocated recognizing this issue?
So the governor recognizes the issue, which is why she's proposing to make a big investment into that space, which includes workforce development. But look, this is where you have the conversation between the executive and the legislature. She's proposed a budget. Those details are to be worked out. I don't have the numbers associated with each of those initiatives that you saw here highlighted on the screen. But clearly the governor recognizes, and frankly, I think many of the legislature does as well, the need to invest in the healthcare system, especially on the heels of this pandemic, which we're still in. So those details yet to be determined. This is where the rubber meets the road with the negotiation between the executive and the legislature.
I'm going to pivot back to the Thruway Authority and sort of how this can tie into some of the state priorities. With a couple of issues while we're waiting to see if other folks may want to jump in. One of the things that you pointed out is the targets from the CLCPA, 70% renewables in terms of energy production by 2030. One of the things that's really kind of fascinating, of course, Alberto knows this better than anyone, upstate already has 90% zero emissions in its generation of electricity. This seems like an opportunity for upstate to really help downstate. Can the Thruway Authority and your rights of way and the infrastructure that you've got, is there a role for the Thruway to play in not only moving cars and trucks, but moving electrons?
Yeah, I think that there is, Kevin, and that's very astute of you because that is something that we've been focused on. There are federal regulations that we have to contend with through federal highway, but yes, the Thruway presents an enormous opportunity to get a lot of that, wind and solar as an example, from the North Country down to the New York City area as well. And I think doing that underground makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. But there's a process involved. I won't go into details. I've had this conversation at the highest level. It's something that we continue to look at, but there's a lot of opportunity to do there. There's other opportunities that the Thruway presents as well. I've partnered with New Air, who I think Ken may be on this video chat as well, New Air, and looking at how we can utilize drone technology to really improve what we do from an efficiency and safety standpoint. We're the first agency to do that in the state. I think there's a tremendous upside here. We're taking advantage of the corridor that's been created between Griffiths and Syracuse. And so I think there's a lot of promise in that area. And my goal is to make the Thruway and that 570-mile corridor, that uninterrupted right-of-way, broader than just, cars and trucks.
Matt, you're correct that Ken is on the call. I didn't know whether Ken wanted to follow up. I know that Dan Sweetland has his hand up too, but since you mentioned Ken, I'm going to see if Ken wants to add anything there before we go to Dan.
Sure, real quick, actually it's posted in the chat session. Are there any components in the federal infrastructure bill that are focused on really the newer modes of transportation, such as UAS, drones, or advanced air mobility, so cargo, air taxis, We see at least 38 other state DOTs investing in this transformational infrastructure, but we don't see that yet here in the state of New York.
Right. And so to what degree it's focused on those technologies, I'm not clear. I can find out for you, Ken. You and I are talking on Tuesday anyway, so I'll have an answer for you there. But clearly, New York has some catching up to do, as you and I have discussed in this space. And I'm convinced, as you know, you've met with the governor. The governor is very focused on this. The governor is very pleased that the Thruway is engaged with you and New Air. And so I expect good things to come from that. You mentioned the space on autonomous vehicles as well. It's another huge opportunity for us when you think about places like Arizona and Texas and even Ohio, who have been in this space for some time. There's a tremendous opportunity here, particularly from the freight side on the Thruway. A large portion of my customer base is freight. And so there's a lot of activity, that people utilize the Thruway for to deliver that freight, those goods and services. So I think there's a big upside in the future in that space.
Thank you, Matt, and really appreciate the support working with your team out there. They've been really supportive and look forward to working with your team going forward.
Right. Thank you.
Dan, I see you've had your hand up for a little bit. Would you go ahead?
Thanks. Thanks, Matt. Great presentation. Thanks for all the time and the detail on this. Just curious, Governor Cuomo said last year we're going to break ground on the 81 project in 2022. Funding is moving to be available. Governor Hochul, of course, saying, I think just this week, community grid is what we're doing. Right. As far as the timeline goes, do you have any insight as to whether or not that 2022 goal is achievable, or if we're moving more towards next year or the following year?
No, yeah, thanks. That's a great question. No, I think it's absolutely achievable. Obviously, I've been involved in that project as well. There's about 7,000. So the process is you've got to respond to all the comments that have been received by stakeholders across the board. There's about 7,000 comments of those. Those are being compiled now. They'll be submitted to Federal Highway. When you do your final EIS submission, you also have to have a financial plan. Well, now that the governor's committed that 1.1 billion, we know that that's available. So all of that will be submitted in probably April, May-ish. And then we'll wait for a final ROD or a record of decision. Federal Highway, the federal government is very supportive, of reconnecting disenfranchised communities, kind of, fixing some of the sins of the past. And I know 81 is something that's been on their radar for a long time. They're very excited about this opportunity as well. And I expect that to move right along. And so that, yes, the project can begin in 2022. The large part of the project would probably actually really start more towards 23, but there'll be a lot of work beginning in 2022. And then, of course, for the next 5 years with that project, people will see a lot of activity.
Thank you.
Yep.
Not sure if we have any other hands up, but if anybody, we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. Not seeing any hands just yet. Matt, one thing that I don't know has gotten sort of the level of attention from the budget, but I do think that it's important that the governor spend some time on this, was there's been a significant amount of COVID relief for business that's come from the state, COVID assistance. We're sort of moving into another phase of that, though, and yet, as we are recovering, it's still fragile.
Right.
So we have certainly seen some things that are in this proposal, such as small business tax credits, a small business tax reduction, also acceleration, I guess, of the middle class tax cut. Can you touch base on that just a bit?
Well, Kevin, really, I can only give you a personal opinion on that because, again, those are the details that are going to be, negotiated between the executive and the legislature. But having spoken to many people throughout the legislature, I suspect that you're going to see broad support for these, notions and these ideas of helping support small business. It's no secret to anybody because of the pandemic what has happened to small business across the board, and people recognize that there's a lot of support necessary for them. But I'm sorry, I don't have specific details, on those exact numbers until those are closed out.
Sure. I guess one other area, Dave Mankiewicz brought it up in the chat, and that's relative to the Environmental Bond Act. And certainly how I guess it's going to try to help the state make some of these investments and cover some of the costs associated with CLCPA implementation.
Right.
Certainly I know this is something the governor is looking for support from. Can you speak to some of the highlights and I guess what do we need to do to learn more about it, or, to ultimately decide how we're going to support it?
Well, I think you're right that some of these things that have been proposed here rely on the passage of that Environmental Bond Act. There will be an effort to educate folks, that she's increased it from 300 to 400, or from 3 to 4 rather. And so that action alone says to me that the governor is very committed to do that. But there's going to need to be a concerted effort to educate people on what that means and what the benefits are. I've been told that there'll be, some programming put together for that. Again, not available at this time, but organizations like CEO Center States are going to play a large role in helping educate the public on the benefits of the passage of that bond act.
Well, we know that certainly the work of the Climate Action Council and issues like this Bond Act are going to be front and center, I think, for a lot of us this year to really try to understand it. There are certainly going to be some impacts that are going to have substantial effects on our members, but there are also going to be opportunities in there. And we want to make sure that we're paying attention where there are concerns, but also where we're certainly trying to take advantage of where we see new opportunities emerging. So there are, a number of items in this budget that we saw that we thought struck the right tone, frankly, and we're looking forward to the conversations that are going to have with the legislature as well. Going to give Rob a chance to have some of the last words here and touch base with you as well on this and some of the things that we're looking at going forward too.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kevin, and
Hey,
Matt. Thanks for joining us. You've always been a phenomenal partner in all the years we've worked together. Always rolling up your sleeves on the issues that matter, whether it's transportation, 81, UAS, all the things that have been important to us. And just on behalf of all of our members, the organization, I just want to thank you. I want to thank the governor for the leadership that you all have played in putting the focus back on upstate New York. I know that there will always be different policy issues and sometimes policy disagreements. And those are things that you and the team have always been open to engaging with our members on, and we appreciate that. But we also appreciate the fact that we've got a leader in the state who's from upstate New York, who grew up here, who knows the story, who knows the struggle, and who's going to work alongside of us. And in particular, just this week, we got some great news from the governor, some big investments in, Matt, as you know, a major troubled property in Syracuse with the SDC property, and helping Mayor Walsh think about what we can do creatively to revitalize that neighborhood and put that part of town back on the map. Between that and JMA and the STEAM school and so many things, there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm built here in our region. And so I just wanted to say thank you for joining us, and thank you to the governor and your entire team for your leadership.
Yeah, no, Rob, thank you. And thanks for being a partner, not only while I've been, here at the state, but my time in Syracuse as well. This is still my home. It's important to me. It's my hometown. And of course, I want to be supportive. I think you're right. I mean, look, the governor coming from Buffalo, she gets it. She gets, what has happened to upstate over the past many decades and the importance of making strategic, site-specific investments. And I feel good about that. I think we should all feel good about that. Here we are, the budget's out, now the negotiation begins, and certainly need your continued support and your members' support here as well. And I would urge all of you, to make sure that you contact your local state delegation members in the Assembly and Senate. Let them know if you're supportive, of the budget. Your voices matter. Because if we're not heard, it's easy to be forgotten. But the good news is, Rob, to your point, this governor gets it. She's from upstate, and I really like what I see. I think this is a very responsible budget. very responsible in many ways, including her making sure that she's going to, add to kind of the rainy day fund, right, to build up reserves for the next few years. So I think that's very important, and I'm appreciative of that. But thanks for your time, and I appreciate everybody spending a few minutes with me today here as well. So stay warm, by the way. It's going to get colder.
Thank you, Matt. You're always welcome to come back, whether you're representing the governor's budget or for your specific agenda in the transportation area. So keep us on your list. We're always so welcome to have you. And thank you for.
Thank you.
Just want to mention everyone that our next meeting is February 25th. Again, keeping our usual pattern of the last Fridays of the month at noon. Sooner or later, we'll get back together in person one of these days, but I don't think it'll be February based on the way things are going. But we have tremendous turnout today, which was great, Kevin. I think we did a little bit more outreach because we had Matt and the governor's message here today, but I think that's also maybe a tip that if we, I know Center State has put it in their emails and some of their more direct outreach, and that might be a way to continue to expand participation. So for those of you who this was the first time or are not frequent visitors, please, we'd love to see you more frequently. The meetings are usually on the last Fridays of the month. And now that we're into the legislative session in Albany, the meetings are, the substance of the meetings certainly are meaningful as we get briefings from various lawmakers or members of the state government. So that's all I've got. Kevin, anything from your end?
Just to let folks know that we are already well engaged with the members of our delegation on some of the issues that we see in the budget and letting them know the priorities that this group discussed and shaped into our agenda for the year. Certainly, we've been talking about issues related to economic development and support for businesses that are expanding, as well as those who are still struggling. We had a very good conversation with Senator May and with Assemblyman Sturpey just yesterday on that particular issue, and also encouraging more support for high growth startups, because we've seen a lot of benefit to our community from that particular sector over the last couple of years. We've also had very good conversations, productive conversations relative to workforce and to housing issues, which are becoming a bigger and bigger issue in this community.
One last thank you to Excelis, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, JMA Wireless, and Quadrant Biosciences for being our advocacy sponsors for 2022. Stay warm, everyone. I think we may be climbing out of the single digits and a little bit too far north and too far west for the nor'easter to hit us, but you never know. So stay warm and have a safe weekend, and we'll see you next month. So long.